We got a chance to pour some snowflakes this weekend. Today we have Dave Dombek. He's from AccuWeather, so he's going to go ahead and get started.
All right. Thank you, Michael. Thanks for the invitation. And this is something I try to do without fail. I try to do it once in the spring, once in the fall semester. So it's good to be over here again. I'm a 1980 graduate of Penn State University in meteorology. So it's always good to come back home here. And I don't have too far to travel. So anyway, what I want to do today, obviously, we're going to talk about the weekend setup here with the potential for yay or nay on the record low snowfall that we have here in State College. What I wanted to do first is just maybe spend about 10 minutes or so. I did a little bit of research on winters when we had strong El Niños. Of course, this past winter, 97, 98 was the last one. And then you got to go back to 82, 83. And then 1972, 73. So I'm going to do a little comparison, look at some data, and I kind of leave you with that. It's food for thought, and what it's all going to mean, I don't know. Maybe it means nothing, but it's some interesting stuff that I found on those El Nino years. So with that said, let's go back in here. Actually, I got to get. Okay, now we're good. Okay, so again, the three that I'm looking at is 97, 98, 82, 83, and 72, 73. So, like we said, for this year, this current snow season, we're at 16 and a half, and basically we've got to get a tenth of an inch or less to get that record. This past winter, and what I'm defining as winter, basically like November through like March, in that period, 4.3 degrees above normal. Looked at 97, 98, and that was an interesting winter. The perception, you talk to a lot of people around here that season, and it was like, oh yeah, it hardly snowed at all. But when you tallied it all up, we actually ended up with slightly above normal snowfall that winter. And what happened was you'd get snow, and a couple of days later it would be gone. So it melted very fast. It didn't last long, and so you had a lot of stretches in there, long stretches where the ground was bare. But we ended up with a little over 48 inches of snow. The temperatures November 97 to March 98 ran 2.9 degrees above normal. Then going back to 82, 83, 22.6 inches. Now that was the winter if you lived in the in the I-95 corridor, the big blizzard of 83. It was pretty much like if you lived in Philadelphia or New York City, those areas, that winter was pretty much a complete dud, except for one shining star, and that was the blizzard of 83, February 11th of 1983. That was the only time, I think, in my life, looking at, and this is back when we had the good snow obs, right? John Neese, back in the old days when we had good snow obs, and we were able to get those reliable human obs every hour on with the snow. But that was the only time in my life I actually saw a snow increase 5 with thunder at Allentown. ABE Airport, 1 hour, snow increase 5 in 1 hour. They ended up with about 2 feet. I think it's 25 point whatever. But there was a corridor southeast of us that really got hammered. We were on the edge of that snow. We did okay. But as we often do here in central PA, we missed out on the biggest snow. But we ended up with 22.6 inches that winter. 72, 73, 31.4. Again, a little bit more, but still on the low side of things. Now, as far as getting a late season snow here, it's pretty much, to get a trace of snow, I was looking back, and even like in the last 15, 20 years or so, and you could go back further, and I don't have the exact number, but I know it's at least 85, 90% of the time you get at least a trace of snow in the month of April here in State College. Some years you get measurable snow. It's actually pretty rare to not get a trace of snow at least once in the month of April here. 1998, the last measurable snow was 0.4 of an inch, March 21st. There was a trace on April 9th of that year. In 1983, coming off of that El Nino, the last measurable was 28th of March, 3.2 inches. And then the last trace actually on the 26th of April. 1973, last measurable snow, April 11th, 0.2. And then the last trace of snow was actually May 5th of that year. Now, most of the snowfall for El Nino winters occurred late in the season. There was more, the majority of it happened February to April than earlier in the winter, and there are the totals for each of those years. Now, as far as an occurrence of the last freeze, the latest freeze in the spring, this is what I found for 98, 83, and 73. The last freeze in 1998, April 28th, but then look at 83 and 73. It was pretty late in the season there, into the third week of May. Now, looking at the El Nino, like the weather following when the El Nino diminished and it went away, and what was going to happen for the rest of that year in those 3 years. I was looking at the hurricane season, trying to see some correlation, and I saw nothing, at least out of those 3. It's only a data set of 3 years, so you really can't take too much out of that. But I found, really, what I found is extremes in both directions. 1973, you had 8 named storms, 4 hurricanes, 1 major hurricane. 83, look at that, there was only 4 named storms in 1983. 3 of them were hurricanes and 1 major. Then you go to 1998, and it's like the other side of the spectrum here. 14 named storms, 10 hurricanes. 10 were hurricanes in 1998. 3 were major, and of course we had one of those major hurricanes was Mitch, very, very powerful Hurricane Mitch. As for the summer weather, what I found is each summer after the El Nino, and this was pretty consistent here. Each summer after the El Nino, again, those 3 that I looked at, was a little warmer, and it was also a little dry, somewhat drier than normal. About a little over 11 inches is the average precip, long-term average for rainfall during that period. And this is what I found. All of those were below. 73, 8.47, 1983, 8.38, and in 1998, 8.26. Actually very consistent in the totals there. The summer temperatures, they were all somewhat above, not extreme, but they were all a little bit on the plus side, on the warmer side. 0.6 of a degree above in 73, 1983, a full degree above, and in 1998, 0.8 of a degree above. Snowfall following the next winter, following the strong El Nino winter. This is what I found. There was actually missing data from 73, 74, so I had to skip that one. In 83, 84, we had much more. We had 35.2 inches, and then in 1998, or excuse me, 50.2 inches. In 82, 83, that was the one where we had in the 20s, and then 83, 84, 50.2. So it actually was quite a bit more in that winter. 98, 99, that was following that winter where we had a little bit above average snowfall. That one was less, down to 35.2. So what does this all mean? Maybe nothing, probably nothing. The strongest correlation that I did see of those 3 years, and again, it's only a data set of 3, the strongest correlation that I was able to find was the summer being warmer and drier. So is that going to be the case this summer? It's possible. We'll have to wait and see on that. Just thought that was interesting stuff. Like I said, it doesn't mean a whole lot, but you're always looking at those correlations. You know, does it mean something? Does it not? So I just leave you with that thought, and maybe you guys could do some further research on that. Now, what I wanted to do is just kind of set the table, and what I did, since I'm actually working a forecasting shift today, I had to organize some of this earlier, like at 12Z, 8 o'clock, between 8 and 9. I put some stuff on the PowerPoint. And then we could also look at current stuff, obviously, what's going on right now. But just kind of set the tone here. 40.8, I just got it from Mr. Syret, 1973-74, 40.8 inches. and that was somewhat higher than the 72, 73. So thank you, Bill, for getting that information for me. All right, this was the surface map this morning. Now, if you look here, this was actually a triple point low showing up here, and this now is probably up past somewhere between Baltimore and Philadelphia right now, and you can kind of see the signature on the radar when we look at that later, but it's pretty well defined triple point low, and of course that's your main low heading up through the eastern Great Lakes region. That was your surface map earlier. You know, the air mass you could see behind this, it's chilly, it's not terribly cold. Not as cold as it's going to be this weekend behind that clipper type system that comes through on Saturday. You got some chilly air ahead of it, you got some mild air ahead, out ahead. Behind it, like I said, it's kind of chilly, but not really that cold for this time of the year. Here's your 850s this morning, and it doesn't take any rocket science to figure out where your cold pool is there, right up there in the north central part of the country here and the upper Midwest. That was your 700 millibar, and of course you could see all the moisture ahead of this. There's a little bit of a break, and I mean it's showing up right in front of us there on the radar, you could see there, and then you have that pretty big area behind this back into Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, and so forth with a lot of 700 millibar moisture. There's your 500 millibar, and that's a pretty impressive 500 millibar pattern for early April. And that's a nice tilt there, negative tilt to the 500 millibar trough. You got, of course, a couple of pieces of that rotating northward, and we'll look at this later, but this whole system sort of rotating around, and one piece of it comes through. It is coming through now. There's another piece that comes through tonight. Then there's a little bit of a break we get tomorrow, and then we're back into being influenced by the whole 500 millibar trough swinging through here the early part of the weekend. That's your 250 millibar winds way up there, and actually the screenshot didn't catch this, but there's a jet streak up in here in southeast Canada. So this area in here, you've got the right rear quadrant of the jet. Of course, you got a lot of jet coming down down through the Canadian Rockies and down into the plains. That was your day one convective outlook. It didn't look all that impressive. If there's anything, it was going to be, and I'm looking at the radar now, it's mostly offshore. This was the area that they were targeting, where the best winds are. And you'll see in a little bit here where the winds, the strongest winds, weren't quite coinciding with the instability and so forth, and the best instability actually being offshore. So it's not that big of a deal, especially given the fact that it's April 7th. And really, the rest of the country not too much to get excited about today on the convective scene. Here's your low-level jet, and what I did was kind of a series here. This was your low-level jet that was forecast at 12Z. Pretty good jet up through the North Carolina, up into Virginia, and of course across the Northeast. Now from here to 18Z, you can see how things are shifting eastward and actually strengthening some. So some of those numbers are actually coming up, but the best core of that jet is shifting farther eastward, offshore, and then aimed up toward New England. Now one thing we are looking at today, like if you're forecasting for, I was just looking at some of the wind speeds before I came over here. I did see a 37-mile-per-hour gust at Atlantic City Airport, and they're getting some pretty good winds now on Long Island, southern New England, and that area where obviously there's not much friction. It's coming over the ocean. You got a pretty good gradient. Those areas are blowing pretty good, generally 35 to 40-plus mile-per-hour wind gusts in a lot of places there now. Look at that. Look at by 0Z. Look at how that jet really strengthens into that 70 knot or better core, 75 knot wind core. Again, far eastern, mostly offshore, far eastern New England, really aimed up into Maine. I can imagine being on the coast of Maine here this evening. It's really going to be cranking pretty good with those winds out of the south-southeast over there. This was your Cape from kind of projected here about 18Z today, and the yellow, this is the shading on this, the scale didn't quite make it to the screenshot, but the scale, and it goes, I think, every 250 after that. The yellow was 500 joules per kilogram. So you can see it's not all that impressive. A lot of it is offshore. And that was your lifted index, again, at 18Z. The first tier of blue shading is at 0, so and your negatives go from there. So nothing really that impressive. Sometimes we're doing a presentation here in early April, we're talking about a tornado outbreak somewhere. Now this is kind of shifting gears here a little bit. This was yesterday's CPC, the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook, and there's no surprises there. The pattern we're in, certainly it looks like we're going to have temperatures on the low side of where they should be for a while, and really kind of centered here on the weekend, with probably the biggest departures being on Saturday, Sunday somewhat as well. It actually looks like it is going to warm up at least for a couple of days here early next week. Monday looks quite a bit milder, but then there's going to be another chilly shot. Not terribly cold. That next shot doesn't look nearly as cold, but it does get chilly again after that one. So far this month, of course, just a little summary where we are. Highest temp was 67, the lowest was 21. Actually, the other morning, yesterday morning, down in my backyard at the shed, as I call it, my shed that I have garden stuff in there, and I have a max min thermometer set up there, and it's a little bit lower than where the house is, and I was 15 yesterday morning down at the shed. So a very, very cold morning. I live out the other side of Bellefonte. Your departure so far 6.6 below, and through the 6th, again, we don't have today's info in there, only 0.27 of an inch precip, a trace of snow, of course, and for the season that's 16.5. So now, what about Saturday? Again, this is I'm doing this on the 6Z data, which I had at the time. The 12Z gridded stuff will be out, but when you look at some of this, this is the NAM, and some of the things to point out here. I mean, certainly if you look at thicknesses in here, I mean, we're plenty cold. Obviously, this time of year, a lot of times, especially when it's unstable, you can't use 540. I mean, your critical thickness this time of year ends up being lower than what it would normally be in the middle of winter. But with thicknesses that low, that's snow. That's like, there's a no-brainer. That's snow. And of course, you look at the, you look at your 850 millibar temps. Yeah, at 6Z it's only -3, but look at like 12Z and 18Z. I mean, these are plenty cold, and here's your surface or 2 meter temps over here estimated. And so, again, what do we printed out here? A little over 1/10 of an inch, and then there's another batch in the afternoon. Whether or not that's right, again, you take it with a grain of salt. That's the NAM. Here's the GFS. Very similar. It's actually, look at the thicknesses here by 12Z, the 6Z GFS was actually bringing our thickness here by 12Z Saturday down to 518. It kind of bottoms out at 516 during the day and into early Saturday evening. So they are some pretty impressively low thicknesses. Granted, a lot of that is cold air up above because the heights are so low, but that's some impressive thicknesses for early April. And then look at the 850s that it's projecting here. As far as the QPF, which again is probably the least reliable of the parameters to look at, here you've got, total it up. What do you got? That's it's like around 1/4 inch, 1/3 of an inch maybe, of liquid during that event. If it's all snow, we'll have to see. Back to the NAM. Here's the Euro gridded data, and again, very similar, down into the 5 teens with the thicknesses. Your 850s coming down, bottoming out a little bit later. The Euro is bottoming out our 850s Saturday night behind that feature. And your 2 meter temps at best, maybe up to +2 or so Celsius. And your QPF a little bit on the lower side, but still, you're still managing to get almost 2/10 liquid in there. And just for for a discussion topic, this is the Euro. This is what the Euro is actually a total snowfall for the entire event. what it was predicting. Again, this is based off of the 0Z run of the Euro. 12Z run will be coming in here. It'll start trickling in about the next half hour or so in our system, and we really won't get a chance to see that map for at least another hour and a half or so based off of the 12Z run. From what I'm seeing, this might be reasonable. My gut feeling is that this is probably reasonable. I'm not sure about, you know, this much down here, but, you know, obviously it's focusing on the higher elevations of the Laurels, the northern tier. One area where my prediction is on the new Euro, what it's going to show is it's going to show more over in the Poconos, Catskills, in this area here. I just have a gut feeling looking at the upper motion field in that this area, far northwest Jersey, Poconos, Catskills, I think it's going to have a little bit greater amounts when the new run comes out. We'll have to see, but that's my gut feeling looking at things. So, you know, what do we know? These are some of the things going forward for State College here in Central PA. Obviously, there's some additional showers, a little bit of a break right now. Of course, you look at the radar, there's another batch that has to come through. Overnight tonight, shower or two, and as it cools, as the 850s and thicknesses come down, we'll probably have a change over to a snow shower or two. I don't think it's any big deal. Westerly flow, typically we don't really do that well east of the Allegheny front here in that type of setup. There might be a flurry or snow shower around late tonight, early tomorrow. Most of tomorrow we're kind of in between systems. This feature's pulling away. We actually are in negative vorticity advection tomorrow. There's a little min heading toward us, westerly flow. So I think most of tomorrow is a relatively quiet day weather-wise, and we'll even get some breaks. The soundings are actually showing some breaks in the cloud cover. Overall, it might be like an 80-20, 70-30 type day. More clouds, some sun, a little bit of sun. Not a bad day. Definitely going to be kind of gusty tomorrow. Not strong winds, but it looked like we were well mixed, at least to 850, and you bring some of that down, it might be like 30-mile-an-hour gusts, perhaps 35 in some open areas. And then in that period from late tomorrow night into Saturday, obviously that's the time where I think there is going to be, at times, there's going to be some snow in the air. And then the question is, you know, is it convective? Is it more showery type precip? Is it snow showers? Or is it an organized, just nice band of snow that sets up? And I think that is going to be the key there. My gut feeling on this system that it is going to be a little more organized. It's going to be a band that sets up somewhere. And if that's the case, and if you have a very well-defined, it's a small system, it's a quick mover, and the more concentrated, the more organized that little clipper is, then the less likely it is that, you know, as you get away from that best upper motion, the less likely it is to really get a whole lot in the way of precip. I don't think it's going to be a case where sometimes you see those, just a big trough, cold air aloft, there's nothing organized at the surface, and it's just blotchy and there's measles all over on the radar. It's just very, you know, chaotic. But I think this system is going to be a little bit more focused and organized. You're going to have some kind of a pretty good band of steady stuff, which means as you get away from that, there may very well just be a snow shower or two around. It's not too much going on. So again, that's what kind of what we talked about here. The more organized that is, the less likely it is to get much outside of that. Kind of thinking, you know, I guess I'd be surprised we're waking up here Saturday morning if there wasn't at least a coating of snow on the grass. I mean, maybe we don't get that. You know, I'm hoping for the record. We're this close. I'm hoping for that record. Normally, I'm rooting for snow this time of year. I love snow, and especially these late season snows. They're really fun. They don't last, you know. But I think at minimum we get a little coating. There could be a couple, could be a few inches, you know, kind of at the top end. I know our AccuWeather forecast right now has a coating to an inch or two, which I think at this stage that's probably not a bad range to do for that. And obviously it's going to be on grassy surfaces, on non-paved surfaces. I suspect that the roads, for the most part, although it is happening, you know, late at night, early in the morning, and looks pretty cold, I suspect most of your roads, or certainly for most of that period, are just going to end up being wet this late in the season. Now, following Saturday's wave, It's blustery. It's very cold for early April. Right into Saturday night, I think there's a time in there where the flow gets pretty well aligned as the wave pulls away and it deepens some. I know yesterday I was looking at this and it seemed like the wave, when it was showing up in like north central Ohio, maybe near Cleveland or a little south of there, tomorrow evening it was around a 10:05, 10:06 millibar low, barely definable. By the time you got to 0Z Sunday, Saturday evening at 8 p.m., and it was offshore southeast of Cape Cod, at that point it was like a 996 millibar low. So it does deepen about 9-10 millibars during that period. So things will line up. The trough axis shifts eastward, so it should get pretty blustery, pretty gusty around here. I would think 35, 40 mile per hour wind gusts. So if you're out and about, heading out to a party or going out to dinner or whatever, Saturday evening, it's going to be pretty nasty around here. Definitely still need that winter coat on for sure. Sunday looks like it's still cold or chilly, but we do get a return of sunshine at least for a while, and certainly a lot less wind as the ridge axis comes over us. And I was just looking at some of the new stuff coming in, and boy, that warm advection is like coming right in here. I mean, I suspect that if that's right, we start the day with some sunshine, and already we got clouds increasing, and I mean, who knows, maybe by the end of the day or Sunday evening, it's trying to spit a little bit of warm advection precip by that point. So it's we'll have to see how usually warm advection does come very, very quickly, so we'll have to see if that is going to be the case. So that is what I have on the PowerPoint, and I did want to just point out some stuff on the some of the maps on the animator. Here's our, this is our radar, current radar. You guys have it up on the wall. You could look at too. Of course, you see this is that very well organized first piece here that's coming through. Some embedded, nice. If you look at the obs in these areas, we looked at what was happening in Baltimore a couple of hours ago. It was R+. I mean, this is some pretty good range coming through here. So in a short period of time, I think a lot of these places will pick up, a quick half an inch or so of rain during that period as it swings on through. And then, of course, there's this break that we're in, and then there's the other piece that's coming through later this afternoon and into part of tonight. As for some of the other, what I'll do is I got a lot of loops up here. Try to go through some of these. These are your surface. I'm going to do the surface first. Mean sea level pressure and your thicknesses. This is the NAM. Just kind of focus on the tomorrow night. There's 6Z, there's 12Z, 18Z. See that, if you look at that, this is something to watch for in the next couple runs, the next few runs of the models. If you remember yesterday, for those of you who watched this real carefully, this low yesterday was supposed to track the models. The consensus yesterday was that it was going to track through southernmost PA, maybe even through like Garrett County, Maryland, and over toward Delaware. Now everything's shifted a little farther north. You remember this storm we had earlier in the week where 5 days out, the Euro and a lot of these models had us getting like a foot of snow, and everything ended up being farther north. And of course, we see that. A lot of times these things trend farther north. That certainly has been the case in the last 24 hours. Things have shifted north. If this low passes over us or a little north of here, we're probably not actually going to get very much snow. We might still get that record if that low comes right over top of us or goes just a little north. So that's something to watch for. If this is the end of the trend, and that's about where it's going to be, or if it shifts southward, okay, different story. But I would watch for that trend to maybe continue a little more, and that certainly could be significant. Here's the GFS. This would be at 6Z. There's a 12Z. Of course, it's only analyzed every 4 millibars, so you don't know exactly where that low is, but it's it's basically coming through PA. And there it is at 18Z Saturday near New York City, and then it's out southeast of Cape Cod or east of Cape Cod by 0Z. Here's the Euro. We get out to tomorrow evening. There's 6Z. There's 12Z. The one thing you see the difference here, here's the NAM, here's the GFS, here's the Euro. Big difference is, yeah, there's a very well-defined kink in the isobars there. There's a feature, there's a convergence area, there's no doubt, but it's a weaker system at the surface on the Euro. That's something to watch for. Look at the new Euro when it comes out. Does it keep that, or is it a little bit more organized with that wave? There it is. It's still just a little kink, and then finally it gets offshore by Saturday evening, and then you do have a definable system out there on the Euro by 0Z Sunday. Here's your 500 millibar. I mean, that is just an impressive. It just happens to be the NAM that I picked here to look at. They're all going to be, the NAM and the GFS are going to be fairly similar on the 500, but that is very impressive for April. What's today, the 7th? So this is April 9th. I mean, this is a very impressive looking 500 millibar chart there, where it actually, you know, you got a strong digging short wave. It actually tries to have a little bit of a closed circulation and loft, and there it is, finally pulling eastward, and the whole trough axis is pulling eastward. But that is, for, you know, for April, for this time of year, that is a very impressive looking map. Here's your GFS. Again, kind of a similar look. There you go. A little closed circulation. And there she goes. Here's your upper motion field. Let me just pull this down a little bit. I think this is another key, another thing to watch here. Obviously, this time of year when you're dealing with snow, and really any time from like late February into March and beyond, and early in the season as well, elevation plays a huge role. I mean, I can remember numerous times it's snowing in early spring, and like literally like 200 or 300 feet in elevation can make a huge difference. I remember where we used to live on the other side of Bellefonte, on the southwest side, closer to the airport, University Park Airport, back in the early 90s, early to mid 90s, there was an April snow. It was actually deep into April, like the 22nd or something like that. We got about 3 or 4 inches at our place. We were sitting at about 1,100 feet. Just down the hill, it's about maybe 800 feet in elevation, and the ground was almost bare there. That little bit of difference in elevation made a huge difference in how much snow fell. So even in the areas that get the best dynamics and get the best focus with this and get the best upward motion, you're still going to see elevation differences with the amount of snow that falls. But anyway, let's look at the upward motion field. This is on the GFS, and this is you could kind of see here how there's tomorrow evening, there's 6Z. We have some upward motion, but it's kind of swinging through, and then it really sort of focuses. Let's go down a little bit. Sort of focuses a little farther east and northeast of us. If you watch here. This is already by 12Z Saturday. There's 18Z. So it's really focusing on like far northeast PA and up around New York City. Now here's the GFS, or here's the NAM for the same time. There's its 6Z. I mean, you got a band of upward motion coming through. It's through. It's already past us. By 12Z, it's kind of shifted east of us or northeast of us. There it is at 18Z. When I saw that, that tells me that it's probably snowing, and especially since you got good elevations to work with up there, up in the Poconos, far northeast PA, Elk Mountain ski area, and into the Catskills. That's my gut feeling is that those areas are going to probably do pretty well, snow-wise, if that upward motion field is anywhere close to being right. Here's the next thing I wanted to look at was the freezing levels. And tomorrow evening, see the freezing level coming down, 6Z. There it is at 12Z. Of course, doesn't move too much at 18Z. This is on the GFS. GFS, I think, was even a little colder looking by 12Z. I mean, certainly you're dealing with boundary layer issues, and if it's doing anything in New York City, you got to allow for some raindrops. I think their low temperature in Central Park tomorrow night is like 37, 38. We had 35. I actually, just before I came over here, I did my New York City temperature check, which I do every day with the clients there, and I adjusted it from 35 to 37. Maybe it's only 38. So, and they're not going to start precipitating in New York City, in the city, until after 12Z on Saturday. And so, if it's not in the city, somewhere nearby, Long Island, certainly down along the Jersey Shore, there's going to be something other than snowflakes falling just because of the warmer boundary layer, at least for a time. And here's the, for a little fun, here's our GFS snow totals. That's by 18Z. There you go. It really has a bullseye kind of over the Poconos. A little bit down into the Laurels and into West Virginia. And you know what? From what I'm seeing, again, on the upward motion field, and that may not be that far out of whack here. Here's the NAM, a little bit less, but it has a kind of a similar look. So anyway, that's what I wanted to show you guys, and I could even open it up since this is an interesting scenario here. How about some other opinions or thoughts from you guys? Anybody look at this carefully enough to make your call? Are we going to get the record? Are we going to keep that record or not? Is it going to go by the wayside? It's got that close.
What is the record, relative?
Mr. Siretti.
Oh wow.
Yeah, we're at 16.5 right now. So
It's tough.
It's going to be tough.
Where do you see temperatures on Saturday for the max?
That's a good question. Because I know on the boundary layer, let me just go get my PowerPoint back, and I was going to go back in. My gut feeling, and that's a very good question, because this time of year, you've got to be careful. Even as cold as it is, you get any sun at all or any breaks in the cloud cover, or it's not precipitating, and the temperatures, it's hard to keep them down this time of year with the sun getting stronger and stronger. I would think it stays in the 30s, almost for sure. It's not going to stay below freezing here. I would be pretty confident that it will not stay below freezing here. Maybe it's 35, 36, 37. That would be my gut feeling on that. Any other thoughts on that? I think it's below 40 and it's above 32, and probably like 35, 36, 37 might be a good number.
No, the record low max at that is like 33 or 34.
Okay. That's possible. I think it would have to be precipitating a good part of the day for that to happen. I think we're going to get a little bit above that. Maybe not by much though. That's a good question. Any other questions? What are you guys rooting for the record, or are you rooting for the snow? Yeah, me too.
Keep moving north. We got a shot.
Yeah, and that's been a clear trend since yesterday. It's shifted north, and all you have to do is shift it another 30, 50 miles farther north, and we have a really good shot at getting that record. So we'll see. But if we see the new Euro come in, it's farther south, and we start going in the other direction. Like I said, normally this time of year, I'm like all on board. I'm rooting for snow this time of year, but I want to see us get that record.
All right, thank you very much, David.
Okay. Thank you.
Next, we'll have Brad from the department.
Brand.